Rebbe is explaining here in chapter 51 a quote that he mentioned earlier in the Tanya from the Yenuka. The Yenuka is a small child, and this small child was a kind of special holy child. He was the child of Rabbi Hamnuna Saba, and he was one of the Tanoim. That was a certain stage in the rabbis after the destruction of the Second Temple, approximately around the year of 160, 165 of the current era. And the story goes, mentioned in the Zohar, the Tikkune Zohar, to be precise, where Rabbi Yitzchak and there was Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda, they came to visit Rabbi Hamnuna Saba, and they saw the child in the house. And the mother said to the child, why don't you go to the two rabbis and get a blessing from them? Because receiving a blessing is a great thing from great people and from anybody. And the little holy child, he said, I don't want to take a blessing from them because I can smell they don't have the quality of the mitzvah to say the Shema. And the two rabbis, they were amazed. And they said to the child, how do you know that we did not say the Shema today? Because you happen to be right. And the child said, I can smell it from your clothing, that you don't have the special quality of this mitzvah. He was a special kid, and he's quoted in the Tikkune Zohar, in parts of the Zohar that was handed down, the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe quoted a story or a saying from this Yenuka, from this holy child that is quoted in the Zohar, in the Tikkune Zohar, where the Yenuka says a person should never go without a kippah over his head, because the Shekhinah, the holy presence, is on top of everybody. And a person is like a wick, and he has to feed the wick with oil in order to keep the Shekhinah, in order to keep the godly presence above a person's head. Sounds like a bit of a strange type of a story. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us what exactly needs to be done in order to feed this fire. What is the oil that feeds the fire over the head of a person, the godly presence that is over a person? So at the beginning of chapter 51, the Alter Rebbe first explains the concept that the holy presence is above the head of every single person. Isn't it true that the world is filled with the presence of God? There shouldn't be any place that is less than anywhere else, since God fills the entire world. And the Alter Rebbe says, I'm going to give you an explanation as it says in the book of Eov. In the book of Eov, in the book of Job, he explains that we can understand and we can perceive godliness by looking at our own body. And by looking at our own body, we can have an idea of how God operates in the world, since the Torah itself tells us that we are a microcosm, we are a small world, we are a reflection of the greater world. God es ha'olam nosen b'libay, the entire world was put into the heart and into the form of a human being. So the Alter Rebbe says that when we look at a person, we can see that, what does he say at the beginning? He says we can see from a person that even though the soul fills the entire body, there is no part of the body that is any less alive than any other part of the body. It's all exactly in the same way alive. Nevertheless, where is the principal abode in a revealed form of the soul? Where do we see the greatest sensitivity to life and the greatest impact and influence of the soul in a person? That's in his brain. And from the brain, it goes to the rest of the body. And the Alter Rebbe explains how the soul, although on the one hand it is beyond any description at all, it does have within it the potential to give life to the specific vessels, to the specific organs, the 613 of them, because there's, according to the Torah, 248 limbs, 365 veins and sinews. And these different veins, these different sinews, and these different organs, each one of them receives the specific type of life force that gives the characteristics and quality of that specific organ. Now, all these different parts of the body, the eye, the ear, the nose, the hands, they don't exist in the soul. There is the potential within the soul, since it is a godly force, to give the specific energy for each vessel. And the way it operates is that this soul first comes and reveals itself at its highest level in the person's brain. And through the brain, the person receives the specific energy and the specific life force that is going to make it possible for the eye to see, and for the nose to smell, and for the mouth to be able to taste. This energy of the soul that is first revealed in the person's brain is then drawn down through the specific vessels. The specific vessels, whether it's the eye, let's take an example, it is designed in such a way, the physical eye, that it will draw the specific life force that is necessary for it from the potential that existed in the soul, which comes through the person's brain. The person's brain has the quality in it of being the control center through which all the rest of the limbs receive its specific energy. And that is why the Alter Rebbe says we see the tremendous control that the brain has over all parts of the body, even over the heart. Even though the heart represents a very important organ for life, nevertheless, the specific quality that the heart has to pump the blood and represent its specific aspect of life in the body is received through the revealed expression of the soul that starts out first in the person's brain. So what we see from all this, says the Alter Rebbe, that on the one hand, there is an element of life which is equally the same in all parts of the body, where every single cell is equally alive as another cell. Nevertheless, there is also a certain aspect within a body where one part of the body will receive something that is specific to it, and another part of the body will receive something that is specific to it. And all this is coming from the brain. So the same thing also, says the Alter Rebbe, is true when we're talking about God and we're talking about the world. The truth is that God fills the entire world. He fills the entire world and all its infinite creatures that exist within the world. There is an abundance of worlds without end, one higher than the other. And all of this comes from the infinite source, which is God Himself, which no mind, no matter how high it is, could ever understand or could ever appreciate. The difference between the higher worlds and the lower worlds is similar to the idea that we find in a person's body where there is a difference between one organ, a more refined organ, and a more refined faculty, and one that is less refined, less needed, and more coarse. This is the reason, says the Alter Rebbe, why in Kabbalah, the way we describe God is we don't describe God as a shefa, as a flow that comes from God in order to animate and to give life to the world. As the Alter Rebbe quotes, as is quoted in the book of Eov, it's written, "V'shifas mayim." There was a flow of water. V'shifas mayim techasuhu. I believe that's the verse in Eov, where they're talking to Eov and talk to him about his troubles and problems. But that's not the discussion today. They're talking about a shefa mayim, a flow of water that is covering over Eov. In the case of a flow of water, it's the same water that's here that keeps on flowing down the stream that is there. The way Kabbalah explains the emanation of God in the world, it is described as an or, as a light. And that's very, very specific because the light is not the same for each individual that the light goes to. This light that shines from God depends on how many different transformations and how many different filters it's passed through in order to create the object or to give life to the object that is inside of. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining that qualitatively, quantitatively, as the light continues to become coarsened by the different levels of evolution, of filtering that it goes through, this determines what object is created as a result of that light. It's almost like they explain in quantum physics, there is the paradox that on the one hand, light is seen as a wave. On the other hand, light is seen as a particle. Or when it comes to the phenomenon of light, I don't want to make this a science class, but the truth is all light is exactly the same. It's an electromagnetic force that is passing through in the atmosphere. It's just that there are different frequencies of that electrodynamic force. And according to the difference in the frequencies, you're going to see a different color. If your eyes were able to be expanded like different animals, you would be able to see a wider spectrum of colors. The colors that we can see is a limitation that is very much part of the way our eyes are designed. But the essence of the force is the same in the color red as it is in the color purple or in the color white before it goes through a prism. It's all the same, in essence, the same electromagnetic force. Says the Alter Rebbe, this is the same idea when we're talking about the world. When we're trying to understand, remember the original question was, what does it mean that it's important to wear a kippah in order to fuel the fire or to show respect for the fire of godly presence that is on top of every single head? God is everywhere. God is in my body, and God is on top of me, and God is everywhere the same way. What's specific about my body, the deeds that I do, and the godly presence of fire that is above me? And this, the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain that although on the one hand, there is a difference between one place and the other, there is a shul, a synagogue, and then there is a bathroom. There is a church, and then there is a synagogue. There are different places that have a different wavelength of energy that could affect you, that is being expressed in those areas. On the other hand, 100% of everything about God is everywhere. It's almost like the idea of stem cells, where they can find a cell, and down at the core of every single cell is exactly the same DNA and the same chromosomes as there is in every other cell. Now, in some cells, embryonic cells, other cells, it's easier to access this core, but in others, the essence has gone through a filtering system where it's more difficult to access that core. And not always do you want to even want to access the core. Many times, the experience is in what it developed into. If the cell developed into a heart, in the place of the heart, you only want to have the experience of the heart. You don't want to have what's done at the core of the cells at that position of the body. And the same thing is also in the brain. In the brain, you don't want to have the functioning of a heart. You want to have the functioning of a brain. Now, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, you want the cells of your brain to be 100% alive, as you want the cells of your heart to be 100% alive. So there are these two facets, these two dimensions, these two elements, where on the one hand, God is everywhere. On the other hand, there are differences between one place and the other. And that's the point that the Alter Rebbe is trying to say in today's portion of Tanya. And I believe it goes until the end. No, it does not. Go to the end of chapter 51. So that's today's Tanya. And if you have any questions, so just, I guess, put it into the comments, and we'll try to address them in the comments. Now, let me